understand the importance of family, the importance of growing up in a comfortable and secure environment, and we don't realize the stories of others who don't get to experience that comfort. The stories of other foster children deserve to be heard, and we should be made aware of the dangers these unfortunate children face. Children get transferred to unfamiliar places that we are all not made aware of, and they can be moved to homes where they are mentally and physically abused. It's unfair to all the kids who suffer the traumas and the constant feelings of being afraid. The way the children are treated in the homes can result in many processes of them growing up, such as jail, juvie, depression, suicidal thoughts, trust and abandonment issues, and plenty more. As they grow up in an unstable home, they begin to develop the chances with more and more ability to age out of their foster home and become homeless. In one of the sources, adoptioninstitute.org, states the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services reports only on neglect and physical and sexual abuse. In the U.S., neglect is the most common form of maltreatment, 75%, followed by physical abuse, 17%, sexual abuse, 8.3%, psychological maltreatment, 6%, and medical neglect, 2.2%. They explain the statistic towards the idealities of the treatment towards the foster children. These statistics are an important part of their research because it includes evidence in the official number concluding to abuse in the foster care systems. Many foster children have stories of their horrifying tragedies. For example, Tony, a 7-year-old boy, he's placed in a short-term residential facility for assessment following failure of a foster care placement related to aggression and destructive behavior. From birth until age 6, he was in the care of his birth mother, but protective services were engaged periodically following allegations of neglect. Tony's father briefly had custody several months before residential placement, but custody was revoked after an allegation of abuse stemming from physical discipline. Tony has been taking stimulant medication for the past 3 years. And another study from another source states, with each move, kids' behavior have often worsened, making it harder to find a foster family or even a group family able to deal with them. Many eventually flee to the streets, where they are more likely to become victims of sex trafficking and violence. Another example from a foster child explaining his situation. Michael. He started off in a roach-infested foster home in the housing projects of Queens, New York City. Michael started off with complaining about the conditions to a social worker. He was removed and placed into a new home, but with an abusive, alcoholic foster mother. He was only 11 years old. Michael's only way of coping was to act out. He was eventually placed in a psychiatric treatment care and pumped full of drugs that made him sluggish and drowsy. But it was his way to survive. But then he states to say, the psychiatric hospital was my escape from my madness. I acted out frequently, threatening to kill myself and doing anything I knew would land me back into the hospital. That's how desperate he was. To Michael and Tony and many other of the majority of the foster kids who have been through so much change and negativity, it's hard to compare our ideal worlds with theirs. We can't even imagine how isolated and lonely they feel. A lot of the challenges the children deal with can be transitioned into violent and rebellion actions. Some are influenced around drugs and alcohol, and they turn into an immediate effect of distraction, escaping from their reality. It's upsetting to believe that such harms can be delivered to these children that they have been through. There are many examples and stories of all these children, and the stories vary from positive to heartbreaking, which others are too devastating to share. Another example of a foster child, James. He was put in the foster care system when he was 1 year old. For the next 18 years, he was in and out of a neglectful, abusive home. Once he was staying with a racist foster father who saw him hanging out with a black friend. He beat James. He drug him outside, clasped a dog collar around his neck, and cuffed his hand to a Confederate flag rail in front of the doghouse. He left James outside overnight in the cold of December with no clothes. The next morning, the foster father threatened James if he saw him hanging out with his black friend again, he would leave him outside for a week. Eventually, James was connected with a caseworker who changed his life. She took him seriously, listened to him about his placements, and helped him grow. Now he's graduating from the University of Southern California, with a master's in social work. Unfortunately, not all cases are likely to be found this way. There are also cases of the positive success in foster care, but it's not put up to that reputation of many negative stories. Suicide is a real issue in foster care, and no one should dismiss this lightly. This is not a matter of what we are willing to discuss until we read the stories of foster children. For example, Gabriel Myers, a 7-year-old boy who hung himself in the foster parents' house of Florida, which he had signs of abuse and neglect. They were ignored by the social workers as well as the manipulation of the foster parents. More than 500 children are put into foster care in the United States. Most of these children have been victims of repeated abuse and prolonged neglect and have not experienced a nurturing, stable environment during their early stages of life. If we continue our strategies we have right now, our generation will be filled with negative conflicts. But we can help and bring awareness to these children. We can stop their suffering. Thank you. The best way to end all the devastating stories is to offer the reasonable and realistic solutions. Some solutions that we have found are to have court reconsider the laws and restrictions on the foster care system. There are certain laws put in place to ensure that the child under foster families. However, these mandatory house visits and checkups are not as often as they should be, and not in a private, comfortable environment. Generally, the other things are also mentioned in the home are family background, financial statements, and references. Also, education, employment, relationships, and social lives. Other things noted in the reports are daily life routines, parenting experiences, vital details about your home and neighborhood, as well as readiness and reasons about your wanting to adopt, references and background checks, approval and recommendations of children your family can best parent. This home reporting process can take up to 6 months to complete, meaning that the information is never up to date. However, more often, agencies try to run families in rather than to rule them out. What this means is that the children will never get a fair trial to whether or not this house is best fit for them. We need more social workers to support the children that are being exposed to the dangerous houses that they are putting into. We need more parents in our community to be open to be adopting foster children, where they can have a happy, loving home. Our thoughts have made us believe that all the children put in homes will have the same treatment, that they'll leave what was behind them. We've all seen the movies where a child who gets adopted is put into a happy, loving home. But that's not all what happens. The evidence and the stories show a different side of things, the negative side. It's hard to believe something so terrible that can happen to young children. That is why we decided to pursue the subject when we were asked to take a stand, to further educate and announce the reality of the everyday lives of others. Not only that, but also to change something about it for the better and for the future. As an organization, we felt compelled to act out and support those who might need it. That group seeking help being foster kids. To help support foster kids, there's many things that one can do. One thing being volunteering at a local foster care center. This might not seem like much, but it will surely mean a lot to one individual. Thank you. If you have any more questions, please contact us at our Twitter, Fight for Fosters, and our email, fftfosters@gmail.com. Thank you.